Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of MS Gamersite, and I'm your host, Ted Michael. Last week I reviewed some card games. I know they weren't your typical poker or solitaire, but yet they were still they were fun, and I hope that you got a chance to try some of them. This week I'm reviewing RPGs. RPG, or a role-playing game, is a game in which players assume the role of characters in a fictional setting. Players take responsibility for acting out their roles within a narrative, either through literal acting or through a process of structured decision-making or character development. Actions taken within mini-games succeed or fail according to a formal system of rules and guidelines. The first game that I'm going to review is called Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate was originally released for PC back in 1998, and critics claimed that it was responsible for the revival of the RPG genre on the PC. The highly customizable game had features that few games had and put it in a world that was huge and expansive. Now, an enhanced edition has been released for the mobile device. Can it hold up to the original? Let's take a look. If you've played Baldur's Gate before, a lot of this won't feel new to you. However, the last time you played it, you probably played it with a keyboard and mouse, which allowed for a lot of actions at once. In this version, you'll be playing with touch controls, and believe me, the experience is vastly different. You can do pretty much everything you used to be able to do. Attack, cast and learn spells, pick up and use items, switch between characters, and all of the other things that you're used to being able to do. For those who have never played before, your character and other character named Imoen are lifelong friends who embark on an adventure to save Baldur's Gate from sinister forces. It is a very long adventure. Along the way, you meet new friends and digest a lot of story. The game can go for well over 40 hours, even if you're a quick game player. From time to time, players, it'll likely be much longer than that. Comparatively speaking, Baldur's Gate is one of the longest, and most complex games ever to be released on a mobile device. That's really it for the gameplay. You start the game, you play the story, and the story ends. It is worth mentioning that there are 2 additional characters available as an app purchase, along with a voice set and portrait set. You can use these to augment your experience, to customize your characters a little bit. The mechanics are where things start to get tricky. Where there were once hotkeys, keyboard commands, and mouse movement, there are now touch controls. Admittedly, things are a lot slower on mobile than they were on the PC. You tap on areas to navigate to them, or on objects to interact with them. This includes staircases, doors, chests, traps, people, enemies, and general navigation. On the left side, there are icons that open various things such as your spell list, inventory, journal, character sheet, as well as buttons that let you rest and pause the game. Resting, of course, also doubles as the way you learn spells, and pausing the game is an essential element to get your party in order during the intense moment of the game because touch controls simply aren't fast enough. On the right side is your party list, where you can switch between characters as well as a few buttons that do things like raise and lower characters' names on screens and show objects. On the bottom is the action bar, where you choose what special abilities, attacks, spells, and items you use. Pretty much everything in the game is tapping. You tap to move, tap to attack, and tap to select things. So there's really aren't any weird swipes or gesture commands. In the journal, you can take down your own notes and use the device keyboard for that. Overall, whether or not you will like this game or hate this game depends on what kind of gamer you are. If you're strictly casual, like Angry Birds or even Clash of the Clans, you may not like this title. If you're a PC or console gamer looking for that level of gaming on your mobile phone, you very well may like this title. If you get to play it without most of the bugs that are being reported, it's a long and amazing game that pretty much any RPG enthusiast will enjoy. The next game I'd like to review is called Dungeon Hunter 5. Gameloft's Dungeon Hunter Dungeon Crawler series has seen a lot of changes over the years, and that theme continues with this year's release of Dungeon Hunter 5. Yes, the hack and slash series continues its march into freemium territory, but this time it does so with a system that's pretty fair to its players. It actually leads to a game that's not only pretty enjoyable within the confines of its system, but also the potential for long-term investment. While Dungeon Hunter 5 retains the series' basis of a hack and slash adventure, there's a lot of changes on top of that fast and fluid combat system. Single-player missions are very bite-sized and are quite short. Loot is earned at a steady pace during missions, but it's a lot more homogeneous, replaying the same missions on the same different difficulty, typical award, the same weapons and armor. While this may seem like a fatal flaw, it actually works very well into the game's upgrade system. In Dungeon Hunter 5, all loot is earned in card format. Weapons and armor have elemental stats and levels associated with them. Equipment cards can be upgraded by fusing the cards with others that get converted into raw experience that is applied to the card you want to upgrade. Cards can also evolve into even more powerful cards if you have the right evolution tools. Cards can be even earn a special fusion upgrade if players upgrade the same card within 4 or more the same exact type. Add in elemental bonuses and fusion cards that are strictly used for upgrades, and Dungeon Hunter 5 system is relatively robust. In addition to single-player missions, Dungeon Hunter 5 has a social-oriented strongholds mode that has you going head-to-head against other players. During the course of single-player missions, you'll earn mission cards that you can place in your stronghold. These missions earn currency that can be used for upgrades. Other players can raid your stronghold and take out your minions as well as an AI controlled version of yourself to loot any currency being stored at your base. It's a pretty cool way of earning extra items and gold, and the ability to earn, upgrade, and place enemies that you fight in missions within your stronghold is a pretty cool feature. Meanwhile, the class system has made way to full player customability. There are 5 different types of weapons that affect whether you want a ranged or non-ranged character, as well as attack speed and raw strength. Players can also customize their spells with 2 slots, as well as a belt item that bestows additional perks. There's also an elemental factor which can play a significant role in the type of enemies you take on. It's a pretty great system and means that players really only need one character in order to try out the various warrior types. Freemium wise, Dungeon Hunter 5 focuses on 2 elements: separate timer system attached to both single player and stronghold missions, and a premium currency system focused on randomized loot as well as speeding up timers. As far as premium games go, Dungeon Hunter 5 is pretty complicated in terms of its elements. It can also be pretty daunting to new players, particularly since the game doesn't do the best of jobs explaining all of the nuance. However, once you get into the game, Dungeon Hunter 5 isn't nearly as unforgiving as one might think. The timer systems do impose a restriction on straight play time, but there's typically plenty to do before you've met with your hard wall. The premium currency itself is restricted to restoring timers and used to open special premium treasure chests that award randomized high-end loot. Admittedly, the heavy grind associated with upgrading equipment and minions means that you'll spend a lot of your energy replaying missions to earn extra loot, but at this point, that's just part of the game. It also wasn't a fan of the randomized loot system, as the inclusion of a rating system means there's some pay-to-win potential that's more meaningful as you're playing against other players. The only real complaint I have with Dungeon Hunter 5 lies in an inability to really estimate the difficulty of missions and strongholds. There were a few times when I tried to tackle the next single player mission and was unable to complete it. It also doesn't help that failing a single player mission requires premium currency simply to continue. The lack of confirmation screens for spending that rare premium currency also speaks to the game's desire for you to spend it indiscriminately. This is probably the one area of the game where I can sense the freemium element taking a turn towards evil, but with enough planning, I think most players can avoid it. Make no mistake, Dungeon Hunter 5 is knee-deep in its freemium systems, and it's not going to make any convert for those that are staunchly against such elements. However, for those others willing to engage with what it offers in the environment that it offers it in, I believe you'll have a good time. The visuals are impressive, presentation is top-notch, and all the game systems are fairly mature in implementation. True, it's not quite a perfect game, even within its particular subgenre, but to me, it's a game that not only want to continue to play, but also one that doesn't try to penalize me for doing so. In a world of highly aggressive freemium systems, that's an accomplishment all in itself and makes Dungeon Hunter 5 worth exploring. The next game I'm going to review is called Crash Lands. This might sound odd, but I hadn't been paying much attention to Crash Lands. I had read the inspiring story behind this Genesis, and I knew it was some sort of crafting game. I knew the developer, Butterscotch Shenanigans, had always turned out quality games, but because I had initially pegged it as being something outside of my usual interest, my eye was off the ball. I'm glad for that because it allowed me to approach this game without too much preconceptions or any sort of hype built up. If anything, I wasn't sure if I'd like it as much as another reviewer might, but since I rarely get deeply into games built around crafting mechanisms, Crashland had to win me over, in other words, and my biggest surprise is how fully it did so. Several hours into the game, as I was frantically weaving my way through angry floating squids and fire-belching rock monsters, trying to gather up enough essence to upgrade my latest pet without getting killed yet again. I knew it had its hooks into me, and it didn't take too much thinking to figure out why. I'm not sure whether to call Crashland a crafting game with an action RPG bolted into it, or an action RPG with a crafting game bolted onto it. But either way, it's an incredibly compelling mixture of mechanics. It's also a design masterpiece from the way it doles out its many treats in careful measurements to the way it streamlines a lot of the more irritating elements typically found in games with crafting systems. I could go on for days about any little bit of the game, and who knows, I just might. Let's see where this review goes. The basic premises of the game has some jerk stealing a part from your spaceship, causing you to crash on a nearby planet. You'll need to repair your ship, but to do that, you're going to need some parts that can't exactly be found in your local 7-Eleven. You're given your first crafting station, told to gather up some grass, and you're off to the races. At first, you won't even have access to a weapon. Instead, you'll get your first crafting tool, a saw, which is automatically incorporated into your character's suit. Yes, you won't need to fish around in menus or swap out tools constantly in Crashlands. Whichever tool suits the job is the one your character Flux will use, and they'll never break either. So once you have the tool you need, you'll always have it. With that saw in hand, you'll have to go find some wood, a task which you'll likely run you into the local wildlife for the first time. With no weapon to fight back, all you can do is try to stay out of their way, a job made slightly easier by the game's using red markers to highlight the path of any incoming attack. So only a few minutes into the game, you've already learned the behavior patterns of at least one type of enemy and how to evade attacks. It's not long after that you'll craft your first weapon. It might be a good one, or it might be a rather plain one. Crafting any gear in Crashland will produce a slightly different result every time. Sure, it'll always be a level 5 hammer, but it could be a satisfying level 5 hammer of coldness, or an excellent level 5 hammer of toxicity, or any number of other variations. Old gear can be broken down to recover some components. So if you want to re-roll a gear piece to see if you can get a better result, it's not a total loss. Gear increase varies various stats, with the most obvious and important being your attack power and HP. Unlocking and creating new gear sets in is basically like leveling up your character in an RPG. If you're particularly good at dodging and are extremely persistent, you don't technically need to upgrade your gear, but it makes things a lot easier. Plus, it changes the appearance of your character, so it's fun to upgrade even from a single visual standpoint. With a weapon in hand and maybe even a bit of armor to cover yourself up, you're now ready to start taking on some one-legged hippo that might go fine, but if it doesn't, you'll discover how Crashland handles death. You'll respawn back at your home point with low HP, with some of your most recent recovered materials lost. Make your way back to the point at which you died, which is hopefully marked on your map, and you'll get those materials back. Plus, a gravestone to moralize the occasion. That's it. Oh, and whatever enemy you might have been trying to whittle down will be back up to full HP, which can be a bit of a bummer, but isn't the end of the world. Having to march your way back and start beating down whatever you were trying to kill from scratch is enough of a punishment to make you want to avoid death. But the general leniency of the game means players of all skill levels will be able to move forward eventually. Your gravestone isn't the only thing that will be marked on that handy map. Points of interest related to any quests you have open will be clearly marked, and any teleporters you can find will also be highlighted. If you want to travel to any of those teleporters, you can just tap them and you'll be there. You can teleport out from anywhere, provided you're not in the middle of a fight. So traveling far away from your home point is relatively risk-free. Go ahead and explore. Just keep your eye out for teleporters as you go to make sure you're leaving a trail of breadcrumbs behind you. As for the quests, you'll get those from a variety of sources. Some of them are critical to moving the story forward and opening up essential new tools and items, while others are side quests that offer up enticing bonuses but aren't required for progression. You can tackle them as you like, or ignore them and build a giant house if that's your thing. Crashland uses quests to slowly open itself up to the players. You can't craft any items unless you have a recipe for it, and while new craft stations will come with a small selection of recipes, you'll have to find the rest on your own. The critical ones, like new tools, come from main quests, while optional things like chairs, beds, special carpets, and so on can randomly be found while gathering resources. The optional items make fun little rewards for players who are diligent collecting resources. But the game's core structure is built around the big things. It takes its time teaching you the ins and out of each new toy, and every time you get a new one, it feels like a major accomplishment, one that opens up even more possibilities. All of your activities, all your active quests can be pre-used from your quest log, making it a simple matter to check what needs to be done at any given time. It's easy to lose hours of time following along the little daisy chain of quests even though from a gameplay point of view, you can stop at any time without losing anything. There are lots of fun secrets too. Every so often, you'll get a rare material or a monster egg, allowing you to create legendary gear or raise your own pet. Once you've hatched a pet and named it, you can bring it out with you to support you in battle, feed it to get some milk or other supplies, or upgrade it into a more powerful form by crafting it a fashionable accessory and equipping it. Having a pet makes battle a lot easier too, since you can focus on kiting the monster while your little buddy takes shots at it. It's generally pretty easy to stay out of the way of a single enemy, but getting in your own shot or handling a group can get pretty hairy, so you'll be happy for the help. Beyond your first pet, however, getting an egg from an enemy is rare, so you'll either have to get lucky or put in some time if you're looking for a specific one. The controls and user interface works really well. You move around by tapping where you want flux to go, and tapping on any object will automatically perform the appropriate action or let you know what you need to have if you can't. There's a hot menu at the bottom of the screen where you can place items you want to access quickly, such as potions or bombs, and your map status screens and quest logs are available at the press of a button. Crafting is as easy as gathering the necessary materials and tapping on what you want to make, while construction is done in a separate interface that will bring up by tapping a button. From there, you can tap the item or material you want to place, then tap where you want to put it. If you place something incorrectly, simply tap it again to pick it up and put it in the proper place. If you've got your eye on crafting a particular item that requires more materials, you can hit a button to track it and have those materials displayed on the side of your play area, making sure to bring lots of grass floors around you, even to go out. By the way, they make handy bridges. This review is going on a bit longer, and I'm probably getting too granular with my points, but I'm just really excited about Crashlands. It's unbelievable, well designed down to virtually the last detail, and I can't help but appreciate every little brush stroke, pushing that all off the table of your for the moment. Crashland is simply an exciting game that is a lot of fun to play. Every time I open the game to check something really quickly for this review, I ended up playing it for another hour. It's the most enjoyment I've had with any crafting game, and it's honestly one of the best games I've played on my mobile device. It's exceptionally rare for a game that has both open world and engagement gameplay and a linear main quest to not drop the ball on one of those things or the other. But Crashland nails it on all counts. Consider this one of the absolute essentials. That brings us to the end of another episode of MS Gamers Hut. As usual, I'd like to thank MS&Me Radio for giving me the opportunity to share my passion for games, and my listeners, because without you, there would be no MS Gamers Hut. Next week, I will be reviewing some of the more popular games I like to play. Goodbye, and keep gaming.